Welcome back. Day 2. Today we're going to talk all things decodable text. Yesterday we looked at phonics and phonological phonemic awareness, and I'm well aware that in that PA space there may have been some bombshells or things that you hadn't heard before. So thanks for coming back. Today we're going to look at what decodable texts are, how to use them, what that set for variability thing is that I mentioned in the last clip, and how to keep things simple. So let's get into it. Okie dokie. Oh, there we go. There we are. So back to our literacy block. Where does this fit in? Well, right there. So we had our explicit phonics and PA instruction for 20 to 30 minutes. And then our decoding and reading for another 20 to 30 minutes. Remember the importance of building strong decoding in the early years. It's incredibly vital, You know what I mean? It's really good. You should do it. Building up those skills, because that's the major contributor to reading comprehension in this age group. Decodable text, we've all heard of them, but just in case, I will run through it again. There are temporary tools that enable students to practice decoding using the phoneme-grapheme correspondences and irregular high-frequency words they have learned. They do not replace beautiful, rich books in your classroom. They do not replace the time that children spend in the library poring over those non-fiction books about sharks and plants and whatever else. They don't replace the time that kids sit with you just listening to gorgeous stories or the rich text that you use to build language and writing. They are a simple tool to practice decoding. Now, there are some comprehension elements that you might bring into it, but the major focus is lifting the words off the page. How do they compare with predictable or leveled text? Well, we typically call these predictable texts leveled. They're leveled readers, and they're usually characterized by a color or a letter or a number. Now, they don't take phonics and phonemic stamina into account. They are more leveled for the complexity of sentences, the length of the text, and some vocabulary. They are designed to promote 3Qing. That's why they don't take the phonics into account, because they are aimed to have children look at the picture, think about what makes sense, skip the word, come back to it. What's the first letter of the word? What word might fit there? That's what they're aimed to do. And we know through the research that's been done that those are ineffective strategies for young children who are learning to read. Now, let's compare two decodable texts. I'm sure that just about everyone's seen that one on the left. That's a leveled text. And this one on the right is from Read Write Inc. Phonics. Now, both of these books would be given to children around the middle of year 1-ish. And so that's why I've chosen them, because it's good to compare them. When we have a look at the leveled text, if we think about the fact that the child might only know the basic code, so they've learned the alphabet sounds and the most common consonant digraphs, that ch, sh, and they've learned how to blend. The words outlined in red are the irregular words. Irregular words really just mean that the children don't have the phonics or the orthographic patterns in their learning yet. And so that is 67% of that page is irregular. We want children to be using their alphabet knowledge to sound out words. That's how we build that thing called orthographic mapping, which is where the words and letter patterns are put into our long-term memory so we can retrieve them instantly. Now, both of these books have the same goal. It's that smooth, fluent, efficient, effortless reading, but they go about them through very different pathways. One is evidence-informed and one is unfortunately not. When we look at the decodable text on the right, if this child knows that basic code, this is the level of irregularity that we're now seeing. It's now 18%. And you need words like the and to and his and some, and those words are needed. We don't want to not have any irregularity, because we want to show children that there is this variability, that it's not all a one-to-one, and you just need verbs and articles. So look at the difference there when we think about the cognitive load of the child. Let's look at the sheer number of words that are irregular. So this is from the leveled reader, and these ones here are from the decodable text, much more manageable. So until we'll get into when children are ready to move away from the decodable text into more of a natural text, if we want to call it that, in just a second. Question: are decodables supported by research? And you may be surprised to learn that the answer is, who knows? The results of various studies that have been done using decodables are pretty mixed. There have been very few controlled studies done that look specifically at decodables. Now, there are findings that increased decodability, in that the words in the book match the phonics, basically, that the kids know, they're much more effective for young children. But other studies show that decodables and level text yield the same results. So why am I even talking about it if it's not supported by research? Well, it's because there's a whole bunch of other stuff that is supported by research that makes decodables a good tool. Here are my reasons to use them. I've already mentioned orthographic mapping, and this comes about when students use their knowledge of phonics to sound out words. That's how orthographic mapping happens. We've been sort of sold this story that it's through the capturing of the whole word that we're able to commit things to long-term memory, but the evidence is really clear that's actually not how we view words. Even as adults, we attend to the sounds within the word and the structure of the word, even though we're not aware of it. The difference between us and a novice reader is that we capture these sounds concurrently. So we do it all at once, simultaneously. But the young student who's learning to read, they're going to do it sound by sound by sound. And then there's a leap in development, also a move across in development, and they're able to move to that simultaneous decoding. We know that knowledge of the alphabetic principle is critical to reading proficiency, and applying that knowledge to decoding is a key skill and undertaking. So decodable texts provide that opportunity. We know that 3Qing teaches children inefficient decoding strategies. So what is this set for variability business that I've been mentioning? Well, essentially, it's the child's ability to address the mismatch between the decoded form and stored word pronunciation. So I'm going to give you some examples. That is, fundamentally, they understand that everything may not always be as it seems. So take the word was, for example. I've got more examples coming up, but the word was, a child may sound it out as, and they go was, it was. And so they come to understand that letter A, and we explicitly teach them, we don't rely on them picking it up themselves, that the letter A can also represent the sound O, and this is that opaque orthography that I mentioned in the first clip. So we help them to have this set for variability by making the full alphabetic code visible. Different letters represent the same phonemes, and a phoneme can be represented by different letters. And we have to model how to decode unfamiliar words. Now, it's not about them just teaching themselves the code. Some children will be able to get pretty close to that, but most of them need that explicit teaching. And it begins when we explore how names are spelled. You know, names often don't follow those common orthographic patterns. And when we begin to teach irregular high-frequency words, children will vary. As soon as you teach the word is, they're learning that the letter S can represent S, but it can also represent Z. So we want to make that explicit for them as well. Let's have a look at what it might look like in practice. So, for example, a young reader may decode the word wasp to rhyme with clasp. So instead of reading wasp, they're saying wasp. However, upon realizing that wasp is not a real word, they must then flexibly apply different pronunciations for the letter A to arrive at the word which is in their listening vocabulary. Context plays a part here. So, you know, we don't want children using context to guess the word. The context helps them cement, am I heading in the right direction? So if they were reading about insects, there would be some kind of priming going on. So they're wasps. So it might be bees and wasps, wasp. Oh, but I know that in the word was, that letter A represents O. So wasp. Oh, yep, I know what a wasp is, because we were watching video clips about that in our knowledge building or in our science lesson. And so for self-teaching, which is being able to learn a new word that they haven't read before, They must have phonemic awareness. They have to be able to blend. They have to have letter sound knowledge, knowing that there are multiple representations. They have to decode the word and have a representation of the target word in oral vocabulary. So if the child's never heard the word wasp, they don't know what a wasp is, they're not going to be able to do this. So we know about vocabulary for comprehension and understanding, but actually spoken vocabulary is critical for self-teaching to happen as well. Now, you may have never heard of this thing. I would not be surprised in the slightest. It's one of those things that I'm really getting my head around, and it's putting so many things into place. But this is a paper that can be accessed around this issue. How does this relate to working with decodables? Why am I bothering to tell you about this? Well, we need to know when a child is ready to move on from fully decodable text to mostly decodable text. So they have to have phonemic awareness. They have to have letter sound knowledge. They have to be able to decode into including multi-syllable words. Now, in terms of that letter sound knowledge, it's not enough just to have the basic alphabet. They have to have enough knowledge of the complex code, so all those vowel digraphs and those different representations of the consonants, to be able to switch out the pronunciation. So if the student hadn't, in the previous example, if the student hadn't read words like what and watch and all of those things, then they wouldn't necessarily be able to arrive at wasp. They would be at wasp or wasp, and that's about it. They have to have the words in their vocabulary. And when they come to an unknown word, this is a really big clue about whether they're ready. Do they attempt to use their phonics knowledge, or do they guess? Now, often children have been told, look at the picture, what makes sense? So that looking at the picture doesn't mean they don't have the capacity to sound out, but they're not doing it. And so we have to make sure that as much as possible, we're giving kids really good sound strategies, which is their strategy is sounding out. We want them to be doing that and very proficient, so that when they come to an unknown word, the only thing we're asking them to do is look at the word and sound it out. How do we make our lessons with decodables successful? Well, we need a set routine for partner practice. I talked about low variance routines and how they support. Well, this is an example of a time that they will. We have to explicitly teach the students to take turns and pay attention to each other's reading. I recommend students have one piece of reading material, whether that's on an A4 page or a printed book, as in you've printed it and stapled it together, or a commercial decodable text, one between two. One person points, the other person reads, and then they swap. Teach them how to support each other when they make errors. They don't just have them jump in and tell them what the word is. They can say, try again, or sound it out. And if the child still can't get it, if their partner can't get it, then they can help. Match text to students' stamina so that they finish at roughly the same time. What you don't want to have is that, you've got half the class going, finish, 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 and the other half of the class is on, page number 2 of 5. So if you've matched the text well to where the I do beg your pardon. If you've matched the text well to where the students are up to, then they will roughly finish at the same time. And if one finishes, you swap who partner number 1 is and start reading the book again. Read 3 times. The first one is for accuracy, just lifting the words from the page. The second goal is fluency, so nice and smooth and with expression. And the third one is for meaning. So help children understand that multiple readings are not about trying to make them bored, but that there are purposes for the different types of reading. Keeping things simple. Don't try and have too many purposes for using decodable text. We want to take the guided reading structures that we've come to know and love and apply them all to the decodable text. It's not what it's about. You're going to build those language understandings and the text understandings through your use of beautiful, rich picture books and other texts, which we're going to look at on Friday. But we just want that decodable text to be for decoding. Remember that you don't have to listen to every child read every day. Have check-in students who you listen to, and so that that everyone's doing partner reading and you're going to take check-ins. Now, the check-ins could be that you have 4, 5, 6 students around your small group table, or it could be that you actually get up and you wander and you have your little checklist and you listen to the students read and you give them specific feedback so that they are getting feedback. It's just not every day. It's not realistic. If your students aren't all reading the same text, have some generic questions or a generic task as follow-up. So talk to your partner about who the character in your book was. Talk to your partner about something that happened in your story. Talk to your partner about what you think might happen next. There's no rule that the partner practice has to be in a book format. So what you can see there is part of the Reading Success in Action lesson sequence that I have available. This is a download. You print off as many as you need for your class, and the students can practice reading the graphemes and words. And then when it comes to, then there are sentences after that, including for the complex code. But yeah, you don't have to overcomplicate things. Just keep it tight, keep it simple with those predictable routines. Where to from here? Well, just like yesterday, download the reflection and planning sheet and take that 5 minutes. Really think about, have I got this? Am I working towards it? Or is this, oh, I'm nowhere near this. And so, we need to have a think about it. But remember, the goal isn't that you come away from this 5-day program with a list of 150 items that you have to get good at tomorrow. It's simply to identify what you're already doing well and have a think about what the next steps are. You don't have to worry about climbing the whole flight of stairs. It's just, what's the one next step? Submit any questions that you have. The buttons underneath the video. Remember to register for the live wrap-up session. Can't say enough. There's going to be a live prize draw and all sorts of fun things. Reading Success participants, I would really love it if you had a revisit of Module 8, Lesson 1 and 2. That's going to put you on track in terms of those instructional routines that we went through. Check your email again tomorrow for clip number 3, and don't forget to check into the Facebook group. Well, that is day 2 done and dusted. So much already in 2 days. Oh my goodness. I hope that you're finding it valuable. Ask your questions, and please remember that there's no such thing as a silly question. I guarantee you someone else is sitting at home, because there's just about 1,800 people in this group at the moment, sitting at home thinking, I wonder if that's a dumb question. And I guarantee you it's not. So please ask the question. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye.